Good morning, church. There you go. So excited in some ways and sad in some ways to be doing the last sermon on the Big Bang Theory. Jenna actually said, yeah, all the sermons sort of seem the same after 2 months. You mean there is a God and science doesn't have the answers? Yeah, oh, okay, well, you've got it then. Okay, it's about time to stop. Today is science versus the Bible. Friends or enemies. I did like going out and evangelizing with Tyrone, and in speaking to a lot of atheists that we meet, he goes, do you believe in God or science? Because that is how people look at it. Yeah. He goes, science. He goes, well, I believe in both. They're like, oh, you're allowed to do that. But that is how some people really think. You've got to choose one or the other. You know, it's commonly held belief today that you can't be a Christian and a scientist or believe in scientific facts, because after all, science is about reasoning and logic, and Christianity is all about faith and mumbo jumbo and just believe. But that's just not true. Interestingly, when science was really gotten into in what they call the Enlightenment era, it was actually Christians that started off as Christian scientists to look. They went, okay, well, God is logical, he's factual, he's true, so let's look into science and see, of course, that is another way of proving God. Right. So really, in the Enlightenment era, a couple of hundred years ago, those scientists were Christians using science to back up exactly what the Bible had said. And yet somehow that sort of got away from it, and the world has sort of separated the two. So, what we've got to take a look at today is sorting out, can we have science and the Bible, and can they coexist? And if so, how do they coexist? Well, point number one. First of all, we've got to look at, what is the Bible for? The Bible was not written as a science book. We have to understand that. It's a book about how to deal with relationships, man between women, man between children and fathers, and man and God. That is its purpose. So if we go to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 14. The Bible teaches us how to be saved, because it's all about getting saved, dying saved, and then how to live our daily life. That's its purpose. So in 2 Timothy 3 it says 14, but as for you, continue in what you have learned and have become convinced of, because you know those from whom you have learnt it, and how from infancy you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Christ Jesus. All Scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. So here's it. What is the Bible for? It's to teach you how to be saved, and then how to get on in life. And in life, we all need a little bit of training, encouraging, rebuking, and correcting, because we all keep making mistakes and falling down. Imagine living a life where no one was able or willing to help you. That would be disastrous. Who wants to live in a world where you're an orphan? We all need help. But this means that if we then try and use the Bible as a science book, we're really abusing the book. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it. You have a telephone directory. It contains all words in alphabetical order, but you wouldn't use it as a dictionary purely because it has words in alphabetical order. In the same way, you wouldn't get a dictionary and try and look up the local pizza place under P's for buying a pizza. But they're both books with words in alphabetical order. Yeah, but you're being an idiot. That book's meant to understand the English language, and that book's meant to tell you where you can go and buy things. Exactly. In our life, we use books for their original purpose. So, the Bible is actually meant to be used on how to deal with relationships and salvation. It's not meant to be used as a science book. However, because it is written by an all-knowing God, meaning that there is no scientist who knows even a tenth of what and how the world operates, God knows exactly how the world operates. When he talks about things that we call science, either biology, physics, chemistry, or whatever things we want to call them, of course, it's accurate. So, what sort of things are in the Bible? And again, it's not a science book, but it has scientific things. So, here I've listed a few. In Ecclesiastes 1:7, Amos 5:8, Job 36:7, it talks about the water cycle, which was only understood 200 years ago. So, if you go to Job 36, he simply says 27, he draws up the drops of water which distill as rain into the streams. The cloud pours down their moisture, and abundant showers fall on mankind. So what is this saying? It's saying actually water comes up from the sea, goes into the clouds, goes over land, and as we saw this morning, it drops as water and then runs back down to the sea to give us life. And it purifies it, so we're not drinking salt water. Wow! So that scripture is about 3,500 years old. That's the oldest book in the Bible. Where did he get that information? What did he do? Look at the clouds, follow the water. You know, have you ever seen Magic Monkey in China? No, too old for that one. Okay. There used to be a monkey that flew in a cloud. Okay. Ian and Margot know what I'm talking about. Okay. Think about Genesis. Throughout Genesis and Deuteronomy, and these were the first books given to the Israelites, there's lots and lots of medical laws in that and hygienic laws that are embedded in that, because God was teaching Israel, hey, you've got to live in a sanitary environment or you will die. God went, I need to give you this information so that you can live, because I'm a loving God. You know, only in recent years, science has discovered that everything we see is composed of invisible atoms. Nearly 2,000 years ago in Hebrews 11:3 it says, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible things which are seen, which were not made of things which do not appear. So it's going, you know what, we're all made out of invisible things, invisible atoms. Oh yeah, we found that out now. Well, if we just believed the Bible, we'd have gone, okay, God got it right. So actually science is catching up with the Bible. Other things, medical science has only recently discovered that the blood clots its peak on the 8th day after you're born. And God says that people should be circumcised in the Old Testament on the 8th day. Before that, it's dangerous. Was that just by chance? Well, if it was just one scientific fact in the Bible, yeah, maybe it was a bit of a fluke. However, continually when it talks about medical facts or what facts that we call scientific facts, we find out that God is never, ever wrong. Whether it's, we talked about this one throughout the month. You know, many people believe that the earth was held either by, you know, Atlas or a giant on his back, or the Hindu religion would say that it's on the back of 4 elephants and the back of a floating turtle. And yet in Job 26:7, it says he hangs the earth above nothing. We know that to be true now because Neil Armstrong went to the moon and took a picture on the way back, and he said, look, there's the earth. Okay. There are so many different things like that. Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes talks about the cycle of the winds. He goes, the wind goes towards the south, turns about in the north, it whirls around continually, and the winds return again according to its circuits. So this is all information that God is putting in there. Why did God put scientific facts in the Bible? Well, God is outside time. He knew that there would be a time where man would use so-called scientific facts to go, here is a reason why I should not follow God. So in his infinite wisdom, he filled the Bible full of scientific facts and go, sorry guys, I know that excuse is going to be a new one in a couple of thousand years, and I'm going to deal with it right when I write the Bible. Think about it if you go to Luke 17, verse 34. You know, there is a second coming. In other words, there will be an end of the world, judgment. And in Luke 17, verse 34, it says, I tell you that on that night, 2 people will be in one bed, one will be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding together, one will be taken and the other one will be left. Throughout that verse, it continues on and it talks about how some will be asleep and some will be awake. We go, well, when is he going to come? 3 o'clock in the afternoon? 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Is he going to come at 1 o'clock in the morning? Well, Jesus is only going to come once, because we know the world is round and that everybody lives at a different time when you can be in the dark or you can be in the light. Some people are going to be asleep, Some people are going to be in the dark. Some people are going to be in the light. And he's going to come at one particular time, and we're all going to be in different circumstances. And yet, if the world was flat, you go, that can't be true, because we know the world's flat and there's only one sun. And so there are continual things in the Bible. And again, I bored you with scientific facts for a month, so I'll leave it there. So, science and Bible can work together. But since the Bible primarily deals with man's relationship with man, him caring for man, we can't look at it in a scientific way. If we do look at things from I just want to analyze this in a scientific way, it actually, even if you live life like that, it can really hurt people. So there's a story in the sermon notes about there were two people on a beach. One is a scientist. I mean, this guy loves science. At home, he's got all these different equipment. He carries it in his car, and he analyzes everything, and he feels very secure because he can explain absolutely everything. And out at sea, he sees flashing lights. And there's a teenager next to him that also sees the flashing lights. And the guy's really excited. What could these lights be? So he gets out all his fancy equipment, and he analyzes it, and he figures out how far it is from where he is, how density the light is. He goes home, he records it, it goes every so seconds, and he goes, right, scientifically, I think it's this. And he tells his wife, I think I've analyzed it. I think it's a light this big, it's got this strength, and it's this distance. The teenager goes home. His girlfriend asked him, do you have a good night? He said, yeah, fantastic night. I saw this light flashing. I saw it going SOS, SOS. I phoned the Coast Guard, and they went out and rescued the guy, and I feel like I've saved somebody's life. You see, science can blind you. Yeah. You can be so interested in your empowerment of knowledge that you can actually miss what's going on in life. You read a science book about, how that fan works. Is that going to help your marriage? Yeah. No, it's not. Buying a fan may help your marriage. But understanding how it works doesn't. Just turning it on or off helps it. We can miss the meaning of life in our proud intellect. That's what I'm basically saying. Yeah. Point number 2. Is the Bible a science book? No. And be glad it's not. Come on. You think about it. How long would the Bible be if it was a science book? Wow. Jesus reached for a loaf of bread that chemically was made up of this atom and that atom and was cooked for exactly that moment. And if you understand where corn came from in the history of man in the 15th, 16th century and 20 millionth century, then how long would the Bible be? I'm glad it's not a science book. I'd put it down. Even today, you think about it, people when you're trying to study the Bible with them go, how long is this going to be? It's going to be more than 10 minutes? I only can think for 10 minutes. I watch YouTube all the day. 10 minutes, that's all I've got. I mean, that's literally it. We've come into a society where if we don't understand it quick, I'm just not interested. Believe it or not, I used to preach for 4 hours. I only know about 40 minutes. I'm kidding. But honestly, people used to come to church and be happy to sit for hours because it was the main thing in their life every week. 200 years ago. Now if I go over for 40 minutes, and if you haven't noticed, those two clocks are a little bit different. You know why? I'll put that one a little bit earlier so you don't think I go so long. You think I'm joking? I'm not. I did that last week. Okay. There is a false notion that scientific truth is the truth. And yet there are so many intangibles: faith, love, hope, respect, feelings. I'll be honest, when I fell in love with my wife, my wife would go, why'd you love me? 7:30 on a Saturday morning in England on Clapham Common, I had a bacon sandwich in my hand. This is not a joke. I said, that's the woman for me. I'm in love with her and I'm going to marry her. It's before I was dating her. Happened to my father too. Well, that's just not scientific. Well, it works. And after all, we claim a scientific fact exists because it works. Well, chemically, you've got to understand, you've got to be compatible in this. If we're determining science is something that works, then that's a scientific fact. We're in love. I've always been in love. Guy goes, why'd you love me? I fell in love. That's it. Now, this is what I like about you. But that's it. Well, I don't work like that. Well, sorry for you. I mean, that's how I work, okay? I'm not trying to be facetious, but there is a lot that's about the world that you can't understand with science. You know, the other thing is if the Bible was a science book, no one would understand it at the time that it was written. I'm serious. So what are the things that we want? What are the things that we really want to know? Okay, I want to scientifically know how man can actually walk on the moon. And you're reading that 3,000 years ago. I mean, they would have not read the Bible because they said it was irrelevant and stupid. Also, what we understand about science now continually changes. And what is important to us from science continually changes. So I'm thankful it's not a science book. You know, Ecclesiastes 12:12 says, of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. What is amazing about the knowledge of God is this: God knows so much. Really, the Bible is like, guys, this is all you can handle right now. I mean, really, I could have told you a lot. Even in the gospel it says, you know, we could have written down so much more about what Jesus did. This is enough for you. And anybody that's read the Bible, have you obeyed it all yet? I haven't. I mean, I keep forgetting it. Maybe it's my age, I don't know. But I read James last week, read it again this week, and I could have sworn that wasn't in there last week. Why? Because you keep forgetting it. It's enough. It's all we need. Well, point number 3, what about science in Genesis? You know, we live in an age where the history of evolution and the Big Bang are often parroted to us as reasons for not believing God. You know, even when I did my first sermon in January about this, one of the visitors texts me and goes, what about dinosaurs? Imagine dinosaurs were written in creation. Now, people hadn't found fossils. If you actually want to know where China actually got its concept of there being dragons, they found dinosaur fossils and went, this was a dragon. That's where the whole concept of dragons came from in China. And yes, Mark, I do know more about China than you. I'm only joking. I'm a YouTube freak, and of course it must be true because I read it in Wikipedia. Only joking. Okay. But you think about it. What relevance was dinosaurs to a Canaanite or an Israelite 3,000 years ago? We're infatuated with them because we've got Jurassic Park and all this types of movie, but it makes no difference. So of course it's not in the Bible because it has no correlation to people's marriages or people's health. It's just not what the Bible is written about. Think definitive beginnings. Actually, until the 1960s, some scientists still hold on to the fact that the universe had always existed. Again, some of you have grown up, I'm 50 now, so there's some things that are talked about in science that are so radically new now that scientists, when I was growing up, absolutely said that can never be true. So it's science that is constantly changing. It's not God and His Word that is constantly changing. Things about beginning not by chance. It's not possible to have a random beginning. It's not an adequate explanation for evolving creation. Structure and order. How did we get so ordered? How do we hold together? How does the world hold together? Just going, it was a big bang and it just happened. I was talking to somebody the other day, and this is their basic argument in evangelism. We go, I don't need God, therefore I don't need to try and believe in Him. I said, well, actually, that's not true. You feel like you don't need God because you have health, you have wealth, and you live in a society where there is no war. So I can be moral without God. I said, yes, because you're living in a privileged society. Right. You are not in war. I said, if you were put into a war zone, if Australia suddenly went into a war zone and there was a civil war, you would most probably steal like the rest of us. You would most probably fight and murder if it cost, if it was a choice between your children and somebody else's children. You are only moral because society allows you to be. The person that says, I am truly moral, is somebody that lives in a war zone and still remains moral and says, I prefer to die than to steal. So it said, don't tell me you're goody two-shoes. You don't see your need for God yet.
Right.
That's the only difference. And they're like, See, living in a Christian developed country like Australia allows you to be an atheist. Everybody wants to be an atheist in a Christian-based country. Nobody wants to be an atheist in a communist country that doesn't believe in God and outlaws it, where everybody's murdering everybody and burying the Christians alive. Nobody wants that. So we have to understand and not puff ourselves up just because we're a privileged society. We also talked about, evolution. I said, well, it's really interesting, isn't it? I was talking about how man is the apex of creation. In other words, everything was created for us. So the world actually didn't have original conditions for life to grow. And then another meteorite hit the earth to change it, because it wasn't growing the way that it needed to produce life. This then spun off and created the moon, which stopped the world wobbling, which allowed creation to happen. So it's been a developing stage all towards the point of man. And if the concept of evolution, continuing evolution, is true, why has man not evolved into something else? It stopped with man, because we are the apex of creation. Has science done away with God? Well, I don't think so. Modern man suspects that given enough time, science will be able to explain everything. It's like, there's no other living proof of living matter on any other planet. And the argument goes, well, there are so many planets, it must be out there. That is about the most unscientific way of proving anything. That's like me literally going, well, the world's so big, there must be a God. They go, don't be so silly. But that is how some people think. Everything cannot be explained. Science indeed has its place, but it must be put in its right place. Science is often given the wrong place in life because of two illusions that man speak about. First of all, the illusion of complexity. It seems that for many simpletons and science, for many people, because life is so complex, that there must be an explanation for everything. However, complexity is also a great argument for the fact that there is a creator, because we can't understand everything. Bear in mind that the difference between facts and reality is very, very fuzzy. So if you even think about the theory of evolution, there are so many discrepancies in the theory of evolution. That is why it is still called a theory of evolution. It has never been called the fact of evolution. No one has been bold enough to go, this is the fact of evolution. It is the theory of evolution with still some major gaps in it. And then the illusion of objectivity. The illusion that scientists are more objective because they're more intelligent and therefore hold more intelligence than a believer in God. People ask, why is it that most intelligent people don't believe the Bible? Well, it's the same reason why most unintelligent people don't believe the Bible. It's because they've never read it. That's the reason. If you read it, you'll go, this is unbelievable. So many people give in to their opinions, but read it. Then have an opinion. Now, many learned scientists have died miserable and unfulfilled and sorry about their life. You think about it. If I'm going to follow somebody's teaching, I want to know where it's going to lead me. All right? That's true, right? If you get offered a job, you want to see where you're going to work, see what the hours are, and go, what's my life actually going to look like? Well, you think about so many famous atheists and where their life were. Let's look at some of their last words. Sir Thomas Scott, former president of the British House of Lords, who was renowned as an atheist, his last words were, until this moment I thought there was neither God nor hell. Now I know both are reality. Voltaire, one of the most famous anti-Christian atheists, had a terrible end. His nurse said, for all the money in Europe, I would not want to relive that evening. He cried for forgiveness and wept the whole night before he died. David Hume, the atheist, was one of the most important figures in history of Western philosophy and the Scottish Enlightenment movement. Desperately shouted in his last words, I am in flames. Winston Churchill, at the end of his life, simply said, what a fool I've been. I think Lenin possibly the founder of communism, died mentally deranged, imploring chairs and tables for forgiveness. How different from Jesus, who at peace, his last word, "It is finished, into your hands I commit my spirit." If you have ever been by the side of a dying personal family member, you may well know that there is very often terror, abject terror in their eyes, because they are uncertain of what's about to happen. The truth about many intellectuals is their life was a mess. Charles Darwin, who wrote The Origin of Species in 1859, while not an atheist, while a God believer, his own family had a history of insanity. He had a super authoritarian father. He ran away from home, suffered from depression consistently, became a semi-invalid for a later part of his later life. And in 1871, when he wrote The Descent of Man, he was anti-Christian. He was very influential as he popularized evolution by explaining its mechanisms of it, but died very depressed and very sad, and often sleeping for 18 hours a day. That's not a life I want to imitate. Some of the other famous people that have pushed atheism on us. Friedrich Nietzsche talked about the concept of Superman, was vehemently anti-Christian, and believed God is dead. That's where the famous quote comes. God always says, God is dead. Well, actually, you're dead now, and I'm not. He had a real issue with morality. His influence on the anti-God movement today can still be felt if you read the articles. His dad died when he was 4. His mum was a priest. He became a homosexual, contracted syphilis from sleeping with so many people, and went mad. He was a woman hater. In his teaching, he went, "Go thou to a woman and don't forget to take your whip." His motto, which we have coined in so many ways, "Be hard and live dangerously." He believed there was no good or evil since there was no God, and predicted that the 20th century would be the bloodiest in mankind because man was starting to believe this. In Antichrist, his book, he wrote, "I call Christianity one great curse, the one enormous and innermost perversion, the one great instinct of revenge, for which no means are too venomous, too underhand, too underground, and too petty." And Hitler and Stalin based many of their teachings and doctrines on this man. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, he hated his father. As a young boy, saw his mother naked, became fascinated with incest and competition with his father. He had a reoccurring dream of having sex with his mother and murdering his father, and assumed that every other human being had exactly the same dreams and put that upon people. He smoked 20 cigars a day at age 79, was a drug addict, and severely depressed. But people don't know that when they read his books. And that's where his life led, because that's what he believed. You have to ask yourself, when you read some of this stuff that man wrote, where did their beliefs take their life? And is that the life that you want? Luke 6:42, it says, "How can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me take the speck out of your eye,' when you yourselves failed to take the plank out of your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." You only have the right to preach to somebody if your life matches up. And Christianity holds people to not be a hypocrite. Our standard is Jesus. You go, well, what was in it for Jesus? Nothing. He died for his beliefs. He gained nothing for his beliefs. He gained no wealth for his belief. He gained no woman for his belief. He gave no fame for his belief while he was alive. Yeah. All these other people that write gained wealth, wives, reputation, money, things on this earth. Right. And they didn't love people. They led to mass abuse on a global scale. Only Jesus says, love your enemies. Yeah. He is the only teacher that has dared to call people to love his enemies, because he was the only teacher that actually loved his enemies. Yeah. John 7:17, anyone who chooses to do the will of God will find out whether my teaching comes from God or whether I speak on my own. It's amazing, I was speaking to James just before the service. And we were just talking about the church and everything. He goes, you know, when I studied the Bible, I became a Christian. I knew it was true. But now I really know it's true. Because as I use the Bible, and it comes true, and I see it change in people's life, it's like there's this second level of, it's true. No, I mean, it's really true. No, I mean, it's really true. Look what happened to that guy. He read it, changed, gave up smoking, has always wanted to give up smoking, and wow! A science book doesn't give you that power. It analyzes why you fell into sin and goes, try and change it, or you're an idiot because you fell into the sin. Look at the teacher's life. Conclusion, science and the Bible are not enemies. They can happily coexist. False science and the Bible can't. Lies and the Bible can't. But all science is man's way of recording what went on. An egg and a sperm get together and reproduce an animal or a human. That's science, biology. Why does it happen? Don't know. It just happens. So today, can I believe in science? Well, yeah, I just believe in the truth. And science records the truth. Right. Sometimes. The Bible records the truth all the time. My encouragement to you today, as this is the last lesson on these topics, if you need more teaching, need more evidence, get the notes that we've done all 2 months. You can watch the videos online. Or simply ask the person that brought you, please study the Bible with me, because they're going to ask you today. Let's look at Jesus' answer for your life and keep science where it is, which is useful, but not the truth. And that's the sermon. Amen.